Hey guys, what's happening? So we're back with Philip K. Johnson's Hulk series, and this one, it's weird. It's weird and it's dark and it's disgusting, but it's the kind of story that makes you think for a bit after it's done, and you'll see what I mean in a little bit. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week, and don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so jumping back in, we pick up in the same place we left off with Charlie falling in the water after being lured out by this creature who impersonated her deceased little brother, just to lure her out close enough for it to try to consume Charlie. And while she's over here fighting for her life, we actually get to learn a little bit more about this creature when we head back to the Nexus of Realities, where Ted Sallis is trying to convince the Hulk to stop this thing once he sends him back. Cause again, just recently when the Hulk took over Banner, just before that, both Banner and Charlie had went their separate ways, which really was more like Banner leaving Charlie and her running after him. So the Hulk doesn't know that Charlie's in danger. But right now in the Nexus, Sallis is trying to convince the Hulk to stick around for a bit and handle this monster, because he believes that the Hulk was called here for that reason. Though the Hulk really doesn't care, and if it was left up to him, as soon as he got back, he would just go on about his way. But while Ted is trying to explain what's going on and tell the Hulk what he knows about this creature, the Hulk's like that has nothing to do with him. But Ted just lets him know it's got everything to do with him, because some force has set every monster on Earth loose on him, on the Hulk. And the Hulk just looks at him like, no, just the stupid ones, like you, as he starts to walk towards Ted. So he tells the Hulk like, hey man, you can't hurt me here. So of course the Hulk tests that theory out for himself, because he just goes ahead and tears Ted in half. But while Ted is pulling himself back together, he goes on to tell the Hulk anyway that there are many monsters in the swamp besides them, and the immediate threat that's now come, it's something old and angry. And in fact, it's so old that it doesn't even remember what it was angry about, which now has just made it a mindless avatar of hatred and grief. But there was a time centuries ago when it was a human girl, maybe not ordinary, maybe not even innocent, but she didn't deserve what happened here. Now she's a wretched, monstrous thing of the swamp and of the dead. She slept for a time, but now Eldest has awakened her, and there are people living in the town again. And while he's explaining this, we're shown a reenactment of how this creature was chased down when it was human and killed. And aside from this, Ted Sallis doesn't tell the Hulk much more about the Swamp Witch. And it's not really explored too much more within the context of the story, but outside of the story, we're given a lot more information about the history of the Swamp Witch, who was once a slave by the name of Sally Barstow, who was purchased by a military man who traveled with his family to the New World, and over time Sally grew close with her master's wife, but when he got Sally pregnant, the wife went into a rage and made up this story to the townspeople about her being a witch and being pregnant with the devil's child. So the soldiers hunted Sally down and they killed her. But in a bit of a plot twist, it turned out Sally was an actual witch, and she did seduce her master with magic. And after her death, whispers rose through the village about a swamp witch, with people disappearing and their guns turning into rust and all sorts of madness. And really, I just think that this is one of those stories that could have got its own one shot, or maybe even like a 10-page flashback, because I think that would have helped the build up for this creature just a little bit more. But nonetheless, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I did want to throw in a bit more context, because I'm sure some of you were just as curious as I was, because to me the whole mystery thing was more frustrating than thrilling. But back to the Hulk and Man thing, given the situation now, with Ted Sallis telling the Hulk that he needs him to kill the Swamp Witch, this just has the Hulk like, well, why don't you do it? But he just lets the Hulk know that she's too old and too strong for him and the Man thing to take her down. And while they're here just talking about it, there's another girl in this swamp who is also not that innocent or ordinary, who's getting ready to die at the hand of this Swamp Witch. So Ted just makes it clear. He lets the Hulk know that he's going to send him back now, but if the Hulk chooses to just walk away, this girl, or Charlie, she's gonna die. And following that, the Man thing won't be able to stop her from accessing the nexus of all realities. And as they return, he tells the Hulk, you've been a hero before, I remember. Maybe you are willing to leave this place to its demons, but are you really going to let that girl die? Which now takes us back to Charlie, who's literally staring down into the abyss of endless gums, littered with razor sharp teeth. And Charlie is almost certain that this is it for her. But suddenly the Man thing and the Hulk return, and the Hulk decides to stay, if for no other reason than just to save Charlie. who right away just gets tossed to the side as soon as the Swamp Witch sees the Hulk. But she's fine because she just lands in the water off over to the side. And with the Swamp Witch doing this, it's just more or less the reaction with it seeing the Hulk here, since the Swamp Witch was awoken by the eldest to go after the Hulk, which makes him the priority. But with how this goes down, Man-Thing gets impaled, so he starts breaking its legs off like a crab, while the Hulk, who at first is just smashing anything on the Swamp Witch, he then gets tangled up by the Earl worm. And even though this isn't really Charlie's little brother Earl, it's still kind of wild seeing the Hulk tear this kid off of the Swamp Witch and just toss him to the side. And after that, the Hulk just really goes to town on this thing. He doesn't discriminate. And with how this is done, it really seems like with this issue specifically, the gruesomeness of this is just taken up to a whole nother level. Cause you pretty much have Hulk pulling out this creature's gums and esophagus, and at a glance some might think he's jump roping with its intestines. And I really think it was an intentional thing just to make this month's issue a little more dark and disgusting, which I think is why they brought in the guest artist for this issue, Travel Foreman I believe it is, just to put a little bit of emphasis on the story and how nasty it gets with this one. But when the Hulk is done, he tells Man-Thing like there, almost like he's saying, are you happy now? I did what you asked, now leave me alone. But even still right now, the Hulk is pulling this thing apart, and as he does, we see him pull Duke, or really what's left of him, out of this Swamp Witch gumbo. But again, with this fight being over and the Hulk telling Man-Thing to leave him alone, Man-Thing says nothing. He just gives this blank stare as he submerges and makes his way back to the Nexus. And it's right here where Hulk looks over to the side at Charlie, where we find her holding what's left of Earl, while crying and apologizing for how he died and saying that it was her fault. And it really just has me thinking of how with this Swamp Witch creature, sure, we got this vague backstory from Ted Salas in the Nexus of how she died and how when she was here, she wasn't ordinary and she wasn't innocent. And aside from that, unless you look for the extra information, I just imagine that most readers, and not even most readers, but casual readers, will go through this issue and put it aside and have so many questions. Because I just don't think that most people are going to look for that information, but instead they're just going to judge the story for what's actually in the story. So yeah, I just think it was a little weird that you gotta go looking for the details on this one. But while Charlie's here crying and apologizing about what happened to her brother, the Hulk gives control back to Banner in one of the most gruesome and disfiguring ways that you'll ever see. And though this isn't something that we're shown very often, we did get a bit of a hint in issue 1 that the transformations were going to be a bit more on the grotesque side. And this time, I mean especially this time, it's no exception. But as soon as this happens, we catch a bit of a twist here, because next Bruce is met by Betty Ross, who right away Charlie believes that this is just another trick. So she just picks up a stick and she chucks it at her, because after this whole ordeal with the Swamp Witch, how do they know this is real? But when Betty transforms into Harpy and she tells him she was sent here by the eldest, right away Bruce can tell that this is something different, because as it turns out, the eldest sent Betty here to tell Bruce she wants to make a deal, which on the surface sounds like a trick, but looking at it through the scope of what the eldest really wants, which is to get the Hulk out of the way and release the Mother of Horrors, then it begins to make more sense. Because from what we're told, the Hulk is the one thing standing in the way. So the eldest sent Betty to make a deal with Banner so he'll just turn over the Hulk, which initially doesn't make any sense to Bruce. So he tells Betty she's not making any sense because the Hulk is in his cells, in his mind. And if it was possible for him to just hand the Hulk over, Bruce would have let the Hulk go a long time ago. So Betty tells him the eldest has the power to create life, to create flesh. If you give your flesh, the Hulk's flesh, to her, she'll give us new bodies, both of us, young and healthy, the way we were, Bruce. So he then asked, what does the eldest want the Hulk for? And Betty tells him, what does it matter? Hulk's erasing you, Bruce. It's already happening. How many transformations before he takes over completely? Eldest will come to you soon. She's offering you a chance to undo all the awful things you've done to us. Take it. And after that, Betty flies away. But now this leaves Bruce with a decision to make, and though he's not fully aware of the bigger picture, as far as what this could cost the world, if the Hulk is no longer standing in the way of the eldest, he's got to decide if he's gonna take this blind risk that promises the chance of him and Betty having a brand new start, though that could potentially be at the expense of everyone else. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here, who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/Dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.